Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Euzoia, the podcast where we look into one area of life through many different ones through the year and what the 80/20 best practices are to succeed in that area. This month, we're looking at love, and I'm super excited because this is going to be the first episode where we'll have a guest. I'm here with Anne from startup Settled, and and Anne is matchmaking and mental health expert. I think Settled you started a year ago with the aim to really help people find their partner and settle down. And before that, you had like so much experience in like mental health. I think you started a charity for mental health of parents. You worked with Bloom Wellbeing on kind of bringing well-being metrics to policy making. You were even head of strategy for Public Health England and did a loneliness thing in London for a few years. I think so much expertise, very much overlapping, I think, also with what we are trying to do here. It's like just help people in their mental health, in their well-being in general. So anything you want to add before we kick it off on?
That's great. You make it sound like I actually am an expert in this rather
Well,
than just wanting to help people find love.
I think I'm more of an expert than me, that's for sure.
I can do that.
So let's maybe just kick it off. I like with all your mental health background, I'm curious, like what brought you to then go into matchmaking and to start Settled? What was your motivation or purpose or drive to start with this?
Yeah, it's actually kind of random. Basically, I was thinking about doing something in the mental health space, and I had an insight that I thought that stress was caused by life experiences. And so my first startup was mental health for new parents. Becoming a parent is stressful and causes a lot of people stress. And so I was talking to a mentor about this insight, and she said, oh, well, if that's true and you think that life causes stress and there's these predictable patterns, then what are people struggling with right now? And so I spent a week talking to people about relationships and like both like couples breakups and like people who are looking for a partner. And yeah, when I spoke to people about dating and how dating apps were working right now, I was just like, what the hell? Like, this is a problem that needs to be solved. Like, it seems like the dating apps are not working. And the words that people use were like, I feel drained, I feel hopeless, I feel depleted, etc. And so I really wanted to build something that kind of helped people who are looking for a serious partner to actually find love and then also improve their well-being through the journey.
I love that. So maybe let's just dive in there, right? Like, why do you think dating apps aren't working? What's the problem there?
I mean, different people have different theories. Some people think it's kind of intentional because Match.com owns 70% of the market, which is basically everything except for Bumble. And they make more money from casual dating and Tinder than they do from Hinge. And so some people say that they've got rid of like the algorithms that used to work. So I think there's that argument. The other argument is like, I think that like business model wise, they stop making money when people get into a relationship. And so there's like this incentive structure there. And then also like, I think I have a lot of experience in behavior change. And I think that they're not actually designed for the right outcome. Like what they're designed for is like addiction and like engagement. And those are the metrics that people are tracking rather than the outcome of love. And I believe that the way you design the product actually makes a difference to the outcome.
Yeah, that makes
I
sense.
can go more into that if it's interesting.
All right. I remember that I think Match.com bought OkCupid like 10 years ago or something. And then like within a year, it was just not usable anymore. And like before, like actually it's a funny story. I matched with my now partner on OkCupid and we tried to go on dates.
Oh, cool.
And she was like, oh, actually I was just like on 2 terrible dates and I'm not up for it anymore. I like, sorry. And then 2 years later or something, we randomly were both at a party and I didn't recognize her anymore. Like my facial memory is terrible. And I just asked her for her number and got her number. I was like, wait a second, like I have this number already. Like that's a bit awkward. And we figured out we had matched on OkCupid and then finally there was a reason to go on dates and it led to a happy ever after. But I think that totally tracks that Match.com or like there are good ways to do online dating apps, but
Yeah,
unfortunately,
I think this is like actually a really wonderful example of it because I think that actually first dates or early dating is like
right.
a terrible way to predict whether you're actually right for someone. I think it's the best solution that we have at the moment because people used to meet like at parties or like in the pub or that kind of thing. But then when people now go on a first date or a second date, they're kind of like, how am I coming across? What do I think of this person? Can I see myself with them forever? And like it's like all this like predictive versus like just like feeling and like chilling and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's one example of why it doesn't work that well.
So why isn't that working anymore to just meet people in real person? Like, should just everybody try their luck in the real world and ignore the apps and try to approach people? Like is that how you met your partner? I'm curious. What's your thought on this?
I think more people than I think do now should like it is a good idea to speak to people in public. Like
Right.
it just kind of increases your odds. And like by being open, it's not a bad thing. I also hear from many people, including females, they just wish that people would approach them more and they kind of
Right.
miss this old fashioned version. But I think from the male perspective, what I hear is like, oh, I don't want to like bother someone. And so
Right.
both sides, like it kind of doesn't work. I actually met my partner at university. So like it was kind of, but I only met him a couple of times then.
Right.
But
Right.
it's clearly something there that we then messaged a bit. It was similar to yours in the sense of then like we
Yeah.
messaged at some
Yeah.
point and then we saw each other and then yeah, the rest is history.
So, okay, so dating apps are difficult. Approaching would be nice if people would do it more. But of course, like I feel like the risk is just higher nowadays. Also, like to do something wrong, or like at least from a male
Yeah.
perspective, like you don't want to bother, you don't want to like you're just afraid of like all these coming across as a weird creep. So yeah, obviously, like you then decided let's go in the matchmaking direction, right? Like how does that actually work? Like how do you matchmake people?
Yeah, like it's interesting because for two reasons. One, which is like, so I think partly one of the reasons dating apps don't work is because like people are just not the same as they are on a 2D profile. Like if you have a conversation with someone, it's so different to if you see them written on paper. Sometimes it's like the photos versus like how they actually look in real life. Sometimes it's like their personality and, you know, the way they talk and the nuances. And so as a matchmaker, what I think works about it is like you're doing the job of like speaking to two people and getting a sense of their vibe.
Mm,
And then I think because humans have been around for like tens of thousands of years, there's like they're very good at like paying attention to these micro signals. So like I set up a date the other day and like within 25 minutes, this person was like, I think I've just met my soulmate. And the other person was like, no, but I understand why they said that because like it's like I've been lonely my whole life and finally like I've met someone or whatever. And then one of them was like, oh, did you know that we had these 5 like overlapping, like formative light? And I was like, no, but I could just sense there was something about both your vibes. I was like, there's something here. So yeah, I think like it's an art rather than science. And I don't even know what I'm doing some of the time.
seems to be working clearly. So do you think it's scalable as a model? Like should we just replace all dating apps with matchmaking platforms?
Possibly. I think the other thing that Settle does is works within communities because I think part of this thing is around like actually people when they end up with someone, it's usually someone who matches their values, but dating apps kind of give you the sea of people. And so instead, what I think might happen is actually that like matchmakers become a job of the future where people start matchmaking in their communities. And like, yeah, like what we're building with Settled is like part AI, part human. So yeah, that's my take, but I don't know.
So you mentioned that in communities you have the advantage of like having like shared values, and like what I'm getting from you is that you're implying this is important for maybe a healthy relationship. Like what should people actually look for in a partner, right? Like usually we have like these like endless bucket lists of being attractive and being funny, being smart, being like living close to you, all these things, right? And probably it's not possible to find a person that checks all the boxes. So, but I'm assuming people also come with that like wash list of like, I want somebody with like these 30 criteria, find them for me. That's your job as a matchmaker, right? Like, so how do you deal with that? Or like what's, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because basically, well, yes, like dating apps have encouraged, well, dating in general has, maybe society in general, has encouraged people to come up with these lists and know exactly what they're looking for. The dating apps also, because they say, you know, you can filter on height and like photos and whatever, that's what people think is important to filter on. The truth is that like the data shows that people are actually very bad at predicting what criteria is going to work for them. And when they have these long lists, like it makes it harder to like match. So I think like I spoke to one of the biggest matchmakers in the US and they said that even with 1 million people in their database, it was hard to like, you know,
Crazy.
meet everyone's criteria or match people. And then the thing I see in the data and the people I work with is like, people just throw out the list when like they meet the right person. So one client I worked with said, you make a list and then you marry the person that makes you forget about the list. And so I think And then I think what's also going on for people is like when they have these lists, sometimes it relates to like insecurities they may have about themselves or like what they think other people will think of their partner. And actually working through that to be like, what's actually important to you, not to like society and so on. And like if you had to trade, like, would you rather have someone who is kind or would you rather have someone who is whatever, like the trait is? And sometimes people figure that out as they go. I'd say therefore, like for people looking to find the right partner, I think it's about like being more open-minded, because actually you may think that you want this, but then actually when the right person comes along, it doesn't matter. And I see that so many times in couples where it's like, one person is like very, very anti-smoking, and then they end up with someone who's like a big smoker, and like all of these little things where people break it when it's right.
So I guess if we follow down this rabbit hole, right? Like then it's more about just like meeting people and seeing if it feels right? Like if somehow that feels good, like how do I know that feels right? Like maybe this is a very like rational brain me thing, like not in touch with my feelings. For people similar to me, right? Like how would you help them assess their feelings or like figure out is this not the person I want to settle with?
Yeah, I think it's like one of those things that's interesting because some of it relates to like introspection and understanding yourself. Because actually, like some people believe, I don't know if there's academic evidence about this, but it seems to sometimes be true and maybe a thing. Like we're attracted to people that make us feel familiar in the way that our parents treated us. That's not always a good thing. And sometimes like that is what makes people think there's chemistry, even though actually it's kind of this like, oh, you're treating me and it's like familiarity. And depending on how your parents treated you, that can either be a good or a bad thing. So it's about like being like reflective of that. And then the other thing that I think can be quite helpful is like understanding yourself in the sense of like, why is it that I want this trait and what's going on for me? Is it like, for example, my self-esteem? Is it my perfectionism? Is it my like avoidance or anxious attachment style? Like all of these things can basically help you to understand, because many people have many different situations, right? For some people, it's like finding it hard to choose and not knowing who's right. For other people, it's kind of like focusing on a particular trait which they're very insecure about. For some people, it's like, actually going out and meeting people because that feels draining. And so the more that you can kind of understand yourself and what's going on for you, the easier it will be to kind of have dating success and then to be able to make the choices to say, okay, this person feels safe and right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
But I would say it's
Maybe
not easy.
no,
I guess the other thing that maybe is also relevant to say is it's not easy. And I think that there is an information asymmetry between people who are dating and people who are in long-term relationships. And people who are dating think that the people in long-term relationships have decided and have like made the right choice. Whereas I would say from what I've seen, many people in long-term relationships are still like, did I marry the right person? Like, is this right? So, and in fact, there is a talk which I would recommend, which is like why you will marry the wrong person. And it's quite funny. But like when you understand that, it's like everyone has these doubts, everyone has these feelings. It's just the people are making a choice.
I think there's also like this framing that doesn't really help, that there's like the right person somewhere out there, right? Versus like
Yeah.
there's just a lot of great people, and like you will probably have an amazing life with like hundreds of different people that you could have a relationship with, right? It's about like just at some point making the choice, and it's like, I don't know, that's the one.
Yeah.
But from
Exactly.
there, you can then build a beautiful life, right? But of course, you could build a beautiful life with like lots of people. It's just
Definitely.
if you
And I
never
think it's,
decide. Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's interesting because it's like whoever you pick, you could build a great life with. There will also be problems. And so it's just a different version of like good and bad with different people. And so once you realize that, and that it's therefore no one is like exactly right, it's just like different versions of things. And then I think all of us struggle from this paradox of choice type thing because there's so much choice. So then you feel more pressure to like pick the right one. But actually, that's just our brain kind of being like, oh, choice. That means I should keep searching. So
if we look at this paradox of choice, I guess there's also like this wisdom of like it's a numbers game. No, like if this is about finding somebody like that feels right, and I can't really assess that feeling from online profiles, I just have to get out there and like talk to hundreds of people until at some point I will have this feeling that this is not the person with whom this could work. I'm curious how you think about this, because obviously like you can't matchmake people and set them up on like 200 dates, right? So how does that wisdom kind of translate in your perspective?
I think the more that people meet more people, the higher the chances. And so some of the thing I do is like I matchmake people, but I also talk to them about their other dating lives and saying, where are you like, where else are you dating? Like, are you going to events? Are you trying other dating apps and so on? Because that just like both increases the odds, but also helps us like optimize for like where they'll find the right person and then like talk about the experiences. So I think there is that. There's like a lot of people are getting into like doing like group activities or like going to things where there might be a lot of people there such that they can kind of like, make more friends or like make friends in general who could introduce them to people. But there's also this world in which it's like anyone can fall in love with anyone because like, or like make it work. So I think there's some studies that actually show that in love marriages, as like us Indians can call them, it's like you start with very high levels of love and then it goes down over time. And with arranged marriages, it goes up. And actually, arranged marriages in the long run actually end up with higher levels of love. And I think there's also been studies which show that, like, if you force two people to spend a long time together, there's a quite high likelihood that they might, like, on a desert island or like that kind of thing, or they go through a traumatic experience. And so I think this is also interesting because what we're encouraged to do is like to think our way into it and like think that we are fixed and the person that we're going to be with is this particular person that we need to find, when actually I think the truth is more that we are flexible.
Right.
If
Well,
that
I
makes
think
sense.
that's an optimistic thought to end on. Basically, it's possible to make it work with a lot of people, and I think that's also a great advertisement for the next episode where we will look into how to actually make a relationship work between people, because it's not the magic of you find the perfect person and then everything is easy. No, like you have to put in the work, and we'll look into it there. If you are curious, you can always subscribe at euzoia.org to our newsletter, and if you're curious to check out Anne's startup, that's at settledlove.com, and she can matchmake you with the love of your life. Thanks for joining, Anne. Any last thought you want to share?
No, that's perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, cool. Thanks.